Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Willie, and this is the encouraging word for today. The Bible makes one fact abundantly clear. Makes it clear in word and also by example. If you are a follower of Jesus, and if you are doing God's will and building His kingdom, you are in a spiritual battle against a spiritual enemy. Now, Paul wrote the book of Ephesians while he was in prison, suffering for his faith, being beaten for his faith, being imprisoned for his faith, and headed to his execution for his faith. So much for the theology of the easy life if you serve Jesus. He was suffering because of spiritual attacks against him. And in Ephesians, he lays out in the first 3 chapters how to have a relationship with God and the implications of that. And then the last 3 chapters, how to live in different relationships with different people. And then in the last section of the letter, chapter 6, beginning at verse 10, he says, finally, brothers, or brothers and sisters, finally. It's if you could do everything else that I've said in this letter to the Ephesians, everything else, you get that right. But if you don't do this last part, if you're not aware of this last part, nothing else will avail you in a victory in life. So he says, finally, this is what you must do. This is what you must understand. Otherwise, you'll be missing reality. And what is the topic of the last section, particularly chapter 6, verse 10 through 18? What is that part about? Spiritual battle and spiritual warfare. I'm just going to read Ephesians 6, 10 through 12 right now for you. He says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Now, it's not written just to give us information. It's good to have the information. That's reality with a capital R. There's a spiritual realm, and there's a battle going on that affects what we do in the physical realm. But it's not written just to give us information, but to make us aware and to prepare us and to tell us how to fight our battles. So he says, finally, in other words, do this. Be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. We have to be strong, not in ourselves, to be strong in the Lord. Build ourselves up in the Lord. Strengthen our relationship. Let Him live in us. Let Him manifest His presence in our lives. In His strength. We need His strength. Then he says, put on the full armor of God. God gives us armor to protect us and weapons to fight with. And you can read about it in Ephesians. I'm not going to go over it now. Then he says, so take your stand. We have to stand against the devil's schemes. So we know the devil has schemes against us. Ways that he's trying to discredit us, ways that he's trying to discourage us, ways that he's trying to give us fear. And then he tells us reality. For our struggle, and there are many struggles, could be in marriage, could be in a relationship, could be in your emotions, whatever it is. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, not against other people, not even against ourselves, but our struggle is against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Well, I didn't even know that existed. If we hadn't read the Bible, we wouldn't know that exists. There are spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms that are affecting your life and my life. So that's the word that Paul writes. But it's not just a word. Paul is the example. When he wrote this, he was suffering big time. And what was behind all that happened to him, he realized through a revelation from God, was a spiritual battle. It was his enemy was not the Roman soldiers. His enemy was not the Jews. His enemy was the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Paul lived it. And in prison, I'm sure he was reflecting on what happened in his life and what ministry was really like. And he realized through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit that it was a spiritual battle going on. And he wrote it down for us. So he's an example, and God used him to write the word. And he probably was thinking about what had happened to him in Jerusalem, where a mob tried to kill him. And it says in Acts 23:12, it says, the next morning some Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. Wow. They made an oath they weren't going to eat or drink until they killed Paul. What's motivating that hatred? The spiritual forces of evil are using these people. It's demonic. It's satanic. And they're trying to kill. They won't be satisfied until Paul is killed. Never underestimate the depths of Satan's hatred of Jesus and Jesus' followers. Instead, be aware. Be prepared. Be strong in the Lord. And every day put on your armor, each and every part, because our battle is a spiritual battle, and the enemy wants nothing less than our destruction. If you'd like to see an extended teaching on Ephesians 6:10 through 18, they've put some videos together, and there's a link to that below. Feel free to avail yourself of that. So God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow on Facebook Live.